looking at the man smiling inside you!
Darkman is a 1990 American superhero film directed and co-written by Sam Raimi, starring Liam Neeson, Frances McDormand, Larry Drake, and so many more. Let's take a quick look.
Somewhere in the city, a brilliant scientist is on the verge of an amazing discovery.
The cells, they're holding. They're stable.
Finally, we can replace damaged skin tissue.
Then,
no foolish heroics, if you please.
they destroyed everything he had, all that he loved, everything that he was. Now, crime has a new enemy, and justice has a brand new face.
I was afraid that you wouldn't want me anymore.
Of course I still want you.
The good news is that I know who's behind our little troubles of late. Finish it. Look about you. It's all mine.
He has the power to look like any man.
They're still both sons of witches!
But he is unlike any man.
I gotta tell you something about me. He's a cockroach. You think you kill him? And he pops up someplace else.
In the darkest hour,
Julie, who's the real monster here?
there's a light that shines on every human being. But one. From director Sam Raimi. Darkman.
Welcome back to the Cult of Films. I'm your host, Jon Dunning, and I'm joined by a very, very special guest, a returning guest. And this time we're actually going to talk about the movie that this man wanted to talk about in the first place, and that is Mr. Chris Ruppert from Bad Movie Night. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you for having me. I am very excited. I will talk about Darkman to anyone at any time in my life. And I try to, honestly. As much as possible, I will bring it up.
Now that I've seen it, because most of the films that I talk about on this show, I have seen, and they have like some kind of like special place in my heart. Even the last movie that you and I did in Lord of Illusions, this movie, it was just not. It was on my radar, and it was just one of those ones that got lost in the shuffle. I want to start this podcast off with just a big fucking thank you. Because, oh my God, this movie.
So you had never seen it before at all?
No.
Okay.
Watched it for the first time today. I am a Darkman virgin.
You are a Darkman virgin. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, it was a few years before, like, maybe like 10 years ago where I really got into the movie. But this movie, like, affected me because I saw some of it when I was a kid. And there's a very specific scene, which we can get to, that was, like, burned into my mind, and it made me scared to watch the movie. And then when I watched it when I was older, I was like, oh, this movie's fucking awesome.
It was just like, it was that perfect like void, I think, of cinema, because it was, 1990 was a good year for cinema. If we were on, the Bad Movie Night podcast, we would have Aaron to bring us down the hidey hole. But we're not gonna get into all the greatness of 1990. But as far as the director Sam Raimi goes, this was wedged in between like his two magnum opuses, basically, right in between Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. I think that those two movies are just so loud and flashy. Maybe that's a reason why this got lost in the mix.
It is weird that they had Sam Raimi make this movie. Like, on paper, like this is like a superhero-y kind of movie, comic book movie.
Yeah. In
reality, when you watch it, it feels that way, but it also feels like way different than what you think of as a modern day comic book movie.
For sure. And before we get too much into it, I do want to introduce my special guest. I have a couple of fingers of Rebel Yell. Chris, I am like telling everyone about this. It is
Rebel
a
Yell.
bottom shelf. I'm a trained professional. I'm a W
Is
set.
it Billy Idol's
Right?
whiskey? So
it's made in Kentucky.
okay.
So yes. But this bourbon is a sippable bourbon for like $13.
$13,
Dude, I'm telling you,
Damn.
it beats the pants out of like Jim Beam and all that other kind of like, it's peers. And I'm loving life when I'm drinking the Rebel Yell. Do you have a special guest tonight?
I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I don't know what I'm drinking, honestly. It's some sort of red wine, but my wife only likes like wine that it tastes like candy. And I kind of like everything. So she tried this and it's like, it's too dry. So I just started drinking it. It's red and it's pretty good. I don't know what it is. I'm not a wine guy usually, so.
Very nice. Very nice. You said that, it was a weird thing that Sam Raimi made this film, and it wasn't like just doing the research on it that I got, time to do. It's not only like, oh, it's weird that he got to make it, but he fought so hard to make this film. He tried to get like rights to The Shadow and Batman, and so he's like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna make my own thing. And I mean, everyone won because of that decision.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about this movie, because it's not like his take on Batman. Like, if you gave him Batman, there'd be so much control from the studio to have a particular vision and fit within these, things. You can't do this in a Batman movie. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. And what's so cool about this movie is it takes the Sam Raimi-ness. You get some of that hints of Evil Dead. You get some Batman. Danny Elfman certainly underscores the Batman element a lot.
Absolutely.
You get like a RoboCop-ish kind of feel as well, where it's like sardonic in a way and over-the-top violence. But then you also have like, there's lots of scenes where if you pause the screen, it kind of looks like a comic book too.
Yes.
So I don't know. This is like a really cool mishmash. And I think Sam Raimi is what makes that magic come to life.
It was absolutely insane. Like how much it was like, this was back in the 90s where he could go full Raimi. Like he could do like, the I think it was like the science scenes, and you have like literal like floating beakers.
Oh, that's so cool. Speakers floating by and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. You have these like these extreme like fast close-ups with these like weird like lighting tones to it, like that are just like flipping from person to person, which he has such a pronounced style, and the fact that he could bring that style into an original superhero film, and we got to use the word superhero film very loosely, right? Because the thing that I love about him, because of course famously he would go on to do the first Spider-Man trilogy. He made 2 really great Spider-Man films, but he always was able to bring humor and action into his horror, and definitely horror into his humor and action films.
This has a lot of horror. Like Spider-Man movies, I think, are a way more toned down Sam Raimi. It definitely has more mainstream appeal than something like this, because there's scenes in this movie, hands melting, gory faces, stuff like that is like straight horror if you just saw those sequences. But in the whole picture, it definitely feels not straight horror. You know what I mean? It does feel adventure-y, action, comic booky. So, yeah, I hear you. I think Spider-Man is a more controlled Sam Raimi.
Yeah, and I mean, this one like subverted my expectations from the credits. Like, we start off where it like in a mob versus mob deal, which is set up really cool, because it seems like, like this one side's just like sending in red shirts to collect some money or whatever, but then it basically ends on a bunch of F-bombs, a bunch of people getting like shot up, and then we get the finger collector, and I'm just like, wow, this is not only meant for kids, but like this is like pretty brutal. Like
it's like depraved. It's some hardcore shit. That's kind of where I feel like the RoboCop like influence is there or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, the gangsters also like the movie starts and you got all these gangsters and they kind of look like gangsters, and then you have Danny Elfman in the background like replaying Batman but subtly different. And I'm like, oh man, this is very much Batman. But then once they introduce Larry Drake, who I think is fucking awesome as a comic-y like played up villain in this movie, it gets way more mature.
Oh yeah, he is like incredible. I think that he steals like every scene he was in. Like Larry Drake did some work in this, and he's like you said, he's known more for comedic roles. I know he does like voice acting roles in like children's cartoons, but he is absolutely terrifying in this. And he's not the one that looks like a mutated mess, right? Like
no. I kept picturing. Did you ever see Dr. Giggles? Because he plays the titular character. It's like he plays a good bad guy. He's got that look like with his eyes or something like that. It's just he comes off really really powerful.
Yeah, in just the speaking of horror, I wish I remembered now, like back in, I think I was 7 years old back in 1990, so I don't remember many kids like walking around as Darkman. I'm sure they weren't.
Oh man, that would've been awesome.
If there were, I wanted to know those kids, but like that was so even like him with the wraps on, like this was more Phantom of the Opera meets Batman than any other kind of superhero film. So let's just overarching what is Darkman about, and you're such an expert. I'm gonna give you
Darkman is about Liam Neeson, who plays, I don't know his name as the character, I forget his name.
He has a very specific
Peyton or something like that
set of skills. He
has a particular set of skills in which he is doing some sort of scientific work to create a fake skin, which turns out to be like creepy as fuck and like turns you into the other person. But in this reality, he's making this fake skin, but he's having issues because in the daylight it only lasts for like 90 minutes or something like that. But in the darkness it can last much longer. And his girlfriend, whom he proposes to, and we can talk about that because that was a weird scene.
Haphazardly,
and she's like, I don't know, man. I like living alone. Is what her response was. I was like, oh shit. But she gets kind of caught up in this whole real estate mobster kind of thing, and there's a memorandum. They say that a lot. The Belisarius memorandum. It's the only time I heard memorandum used, and it's pretty badass sounding. In this gangstery mix mash thing going down, Liam Neeson gets caught up in it and gets blown to hell. It gets his hands burned off. He flies off into a pier, and then they introduce a whole lot of pseudoscience where, because of his burns, they cut some sort of nerve or something, so he can no longer feel pain. He's super strong and very aggressive. And then he gets back into his science work and is able to create fake skin, but only for, like we said, 90 minutes. And he starts taking out the mob.
The exposition scene in this, usually that annoys me to tears, but it was delivered in a way where it was like, okay, a nurse telling the students, but she said it in a way like where this happens all the time, and she wasn't even like, she didn't even look very like surprised that she's like, we lost another one. So like, who knows how many Darkmans are running around. That
was Jenny Agutter. She's the nurse lady from American Werewolf in London. This is like the only other movie I recognize her from. But yeah, that whole scene where it's like, let's talk for 5 minutes about why this makes sense and why he's now a superhero. I was like, sure. After you blew him up and you had that sequence of him flying out of the building, I was like, you could show me or do anything. I'm on board.
Let me take you on a tour of the Weapon X program.
Pretty much.
I'm like, I'm totally on board. That, like, let's just, okay, so let's talk about budget, because this is the cult of films. These are cultish films, right? This had a budget of $16 million, and it made $48 million. So this actually made more money, and I attribute this all to marketing, because it had a great marketing scheme. It was like, who is Darkman? I remember vividly, seeing that poster like on the side of buses or plastered on bus stops, on benches. I guess I was a latchkey kid when I was little in California.
You hang out around buses a lot.
And there was always Darkman. But it made some money, I think, despite itself, because it went a little further than everything else that was around it at that time. But so to put into context how much they did with $16 million, they, with the probably like makeup that holds up today, like the flappy like dentures are a little funny, but for the most part, that
face makeup when it is like nasty looking, but it's really well done. The green screen's questionable. There's a lot of sequences where they set up like a green screen background, which you'd think would be the easiest thing to do. But it just looks funky. It definitely looks out of place. But there's like lots of cool practical effects. They're noticeable. You know what they are, but it doesn't take away the fun factor.
You say out of place, but is it, circa 1990 Raimi, isn't it kind of in place?
For Raimi, yes. But comparing this to what? Batman came out in like 87, 88, something like that. The original. Not the original, but what's his face? Is Batman. Tim Burton Batman. Yeah. That movie obviously looks quite a bit better, I would say.
Sure.
Although that movie takes place a lot during the night, and this is like more, there's a lot of daytime stuff in this movie for a movie called Darkman.
Was that a choice? Because I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, why are we seeing all like the big crescendo? And I know this is kind of skipping to the end, but like the helicopter and the chase scene with the rocket launcher and all that, it's just like, this is Darkman. Like, why are we doing this in the day? I mean, it's kind of cool because we got to see everything, but then we got to see everything too.
You got to see everything, yeah. It is weird because they make it such a big plot point where the skin only lasts in the day, and I have my favorite line. If you want to get to it, I can tell you what it is.
Sure, let's do it.
He's like researching the skin, and they figure out in the darkness it doesn't break down as fast.
Right.
And he stands there and he goes, "What is it about the dark? What secret does it hold?" But then, like, he never wears the skin at night for the most part, so I don't know what that matters. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it still lasts 90 minutes. Yeah. Plot holes aplenty, but I'm just gonna breeze over it. Going back to what you said about it looking like comic book panels, like once he survives the blast and he gets like comically blown up in a weird Sam Raimi-esque green screen background. I love the scene of it like zooms in on Franny McDormand, and then it does that whole time lapse thing, and it like changes her clothes. And she's sitting there in the funeral. That's so Raimi, but it's just like, that's the type of thing that I'm saying, like, you spent your money well, because even that little, like, that fade cut edit, like, he just gave a shit about every single frame in this movie.
That scene, yes, it's very Sam Raimi. It's very fun. And I was sitting there watching it. I was like, why did you do this the way you did this?
Right.
Like, I get your transitioning, and if she was wearing the same clothes, I get green screening her because you're changing the background.
Right.
But everything changes, so why not just shoot it regular and then just fade it out? Like, it was weird. Just like, do like a match cut kind of thing, but they didn't. It was weird, but again, it looked fun. That just looks fun. I don't know how else to describe it. It's cheap. It's cheesy, but fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing to put an overlay of beakers floating around. It's just like, he like shows doesn't tell in a way where it's beating you over the head in a fun way.
I think that's because, especially his earlier career, like if you think about, Evil Dead and stuff, what's the plot line there? You could sum that movie up in 2 sentences, and it's all about the visuals. And Sam Raimi was a very visual director, and you could tell that because he has such cool, frantic camera work in his movies.
Right.
And it's a little bit more controlled in this movie, but it's still there. There's still lots of just the cameras moving all over the place. There's a cool sequence when they first introduced the mob guys to Liam Neeson, where he like does his line about the darkness, and then it pans over and there's like a mob guy, and it pans over, there's another one, and they all have like their like little intro moment. Yeah. And that stuff was so cool. And like, if you just pause on a lot of these scenes, I could picture it in a comic book, because a lot of, comic books are like it's not, you don't see every detail in a comic book. You see important images to tell the story. And so like that image where he's flying against the explosion, like that would look and make sense in a comic book. Do you know what I mean? In a movie, it's like, this is ridiculous. But for a comic book movie, it makes sense to me.
But it works. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It works in the ridiculous comic book movie. And like that scene where they do kind of flat, they're like, this is Laughing Man, or I don't remember the names. But that, and the way they light it, because it was the same way they lit scene where he's like trying to win the bunny. And he kind of like goes off in one of his little rage montages. Those are super cool anyways. But when it does that Raimi like fast zoom cut into like her face and his face, and it's like lit from the bottom
and shot up like that. Yeah, it's
such a comic book.
Yeah, it evokes like an emotion. That is the scene that scarred my childhood, is where he grabs that guy's hand and just bends his fingers back. I watch it now and I'm like, okay, they're just kind of rubber fingers, but like I remember it like vividly in my head, like the bones cracking, and it was horrifying when I was younger.
It's effective because nowadays you would watch a James Wan film or something and it would be CG, right? And it would look a lot less effective than that.
Well, and like what you said, like the way he shot it and the way it's super fast editing going on there, and there's like his rage in the background and stuff, like it's very intense. Yes. And if you would have shot that straight on and been like, we're making a gritty movie, like it would have been totally different.
Totally, that probably was one of the detracting feelings from this film is tonally it kind of did jump around a lot, and it feels like this isn't a starter comic book movie. This isn't a starter film for a lot of people like you and I that do this all the time. I could just eat this up with a spoon and be happy with it. But like put like a normie down and watch this movie, they would just be lost, right? So tonally it was a mess, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons why it was kind of all over the place, as far as how it was received.
I agree, because if you get somebody who's like, I want a fun Dick Tracy superhero of the time to Batman thing, and be like more horrified by the gore and the violence in this movie. Now, if you got somebody who's like, I like RoboCop, this is probably more their jam. And that's more of like a genre movie, you know what I mean? But what's interesting about this is you said this movie is original. It's an original superhero movie. And superhero movies generally are based on a comic which has a major fan base and major expectations. You have a fan base that has no expectation. Like these people have nothing to expect. And that's kind of interesting. Like, do we see that anymore? I don't know.
No, I think not since like Unbreakable, right?
Right. But that was even like, you didn't even know that was a superhero movie until you saw it.
That was the twist.
So, that was the twist. Yeah.
Spoiler alert. And that's incredible, right? Like that he was just so put off by not being able to acquire rights to other things. He's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna make my own. And it was good enough to spawn other media from it, to whatever home media sequels. It's not the greatest thing. I haven't seen them, obviously, but just the fact that this original IP spawned anything and had any kind of legs, especially with all these things that it was competing with of the time. Batman, Burton Batman just came out the year before with Danny Elfman.
I'm not a big superhero guy,
right? But
I would much prefer to watch Darkman than like Spider-Man. I don't know. I do know the sequels. Yeah, they're straight to DVD or straight to VHS at the time, I guess.
Yeah.
But like I haven't. I think I've seen him. Maybe I don't remember anything. I don't know how Durant is still alive after that fucking explosion in the helicopter, but I can't wait to find out.
Yeah.
And I do know. I think they're in the wrong order. Like I think they intended Die Darkman Die to be the sequel, and then Return of the Durant to be the third, but for whatever reason, I forget, they're out of order.
Sure.
So why not?
Why not?
I think they have Jeff Fahey replacing Liam Neeson.
Oh well, when you that seems
hot
reasonable.
off the Lawnmower Man, Jeff Fahey too. They're like, we need you on Darkman. He's like, sign me up.
I'm sure they didn't have because I'm sure Danny Elfman was half the budget to this. So
yeah.
They're just like, can we have
It does elevate it. Like, it does inspire. It just so strong inspires Batman for me.
I feel like it wouldn't like that's the superhero feels I got from it, right?
Yeah.
Like if it wasn't there, they even did like test screenings, I guess. And the first test screening was like void of all music, and people are just like, this sucks. This is the worst movie, quote unquote, the worst movie I've ever seen. And then they came back for the Elfman edit, and they're like, oh, this is my jam.
This is it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he has one style though, right? Like that is Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
Like play me some Danny Elfman, you're like, okay, it's superhero Batman, sadly.
I like to talk about some of the performances as well.
Okay.
Liam Neeson, he's a polarizing actor, but the fact that he was able to emote through all that makeup and all that gore, pretty cool. He was kind of hamming it up, though. This is
he was hamming it.
Not your typical Neeson role, right?
Oh man, that you can just watch that circus when they go to the circus and he does that whole finger thing, and his his response to everything, his face starts bubbling and he's like, oh, whatever. It's like, what are you doing, man? It's awesome though.
And that brings us to my favorite quote of the film. He's trying, like I said, he's trying to win that bunny. As carnies do, they deny you that sweet bliss of your reward, even if you, power through that fixed system. And he just turns to her and goes,
Thank the fucking elephant.
In his best Liam Neeson Taken voice. I think that's how he got the role for Taken, honestly.
Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah, he looks like the same.
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's like a Willem Dafoe, right? They were never young, never old. They're just Liam Neeson and Willem Dafoe.
They have him do like these ADR lines, a lot of the people, but they have Liam Neeson do these ADR lines, and they're so bad and cheesy. He's like getting ready to make love to his girlfriend, and I don't remember what he said, but it's like he's just talking. He's like, "Oh, this outfit, why do you got to make it so complicated or something?" Yeah. I don't know what he's saying, and I'm like rolling my eyes. I wrote this down because I feel like it's important because it struck me as weird. She lets everyone know that she likes living alone and she has a nice apartment, right?
Right.
And above her bed, she has pictures of herself. That's weird, right?
In a masturbatory location, right?
That's so weird.
This is the thing. I think that she was quite miscast. Raimi went on to say that she was the hardest actor to ever work with. And
oh, really?
Yeah, I guess they just butted heads so bad because she was just like, I'm Franny McDermott. She would go on to do like Fargo and all these like big movies, and he's just like, no, just we're doing this thing, and she's just like, no, and so he, Raimi said, graciously, he's just like, it was always good, these like back and forth, these arguments, and I always learned a lot type deal, but yeah, I guess she was just like insufferable. They wanted to cast like Demi Moore, Bridget Fonda, and I'm just like, I could see all of that better than this,
Yes. Yeah. She seemed like older than everybody else or something. And it was like she's supposed to be like this like super attractive young woman who like the boss guy is trying to take advantage of, it seemed like. And I was like, I don't know, she seems like she's older than you and more powerful than you. So it was kind of like a weird dynamic there. I could see if you had like a young Demi Moore or somebody who looks a bit more innocent, it would make more sense or something. I don't know. But then it's like with Liam Neeson as this creepy weirdo like in this movie, I don't fucking know.
The weirdest casting choices for your two leads, but again, then everything else, down the line, they nailed. Even down to his own brother.
Oh man.
Oh, Ted Raimi just put in some work in this movie.
That's where he dies. That scene's great.
Oh, it's so good. All the little henchmen, I got some real like Crow vibes.
Okay, yeah, I could kind of see that. Yeah, definitely.
The main villain in this was so uninteresting. And it was he was such a throwaway character.
Well, I kind of like at first he seemed kind of nice. Like he was like warning her. He's like, yeah, we're bribing him. But I was like, okay, it's for a zoning board. And it was like $30,000. I'm like, this is nothing. Like they fucking do this shit all the time. Like this is nothing to get upset about. And then he's like, you should just, not worry about it because there's dangerous guys. And like the whole time he's like that. Now he does apparently get Liam Neeson killed because he sends Drake to do his dirty work. Sure. And that's kind of his shtick is he doesn't do the dirty work. But yeah, at first I was like, he seems kind of slimy, but not necessarily that bad of a guy.
To me, I saw it coming a mile away. I've seen this. Yeah, I was like, I'm looking at it through 36-year-old glasses.
Sure.
So I'm like, yeah, he's doing the thing where he's like, the memorandum. There must be a fucking world record for how many times he said that word.
It's a great word.
Oh, but one of my other favorite lines is where he finds out, or she finds out again, that he has this fucking memorandum, and she goes, "Are you gonna kill me? Because I've got stuff to do." And I was
and he's like, he just opens the door for her and she leaves.
Yeah.
I like the gimmick in this movie quite a bit. The idea of taking a picture of somebody, scanning their face, and recreating it in a way that you can wear a mask of them. Yeah. I mean, you have to like let go of belief, like in how the science works, because he does it to people and then his body is theirs as well, and his voice. But that like little montage where he gets one of the goons in trouble with his own men, that was a really cool, fun sequence. I wish there was a little bit more of that.
Yeah,
because that was like playing with that gimmick that unfortunately, like a lot of the movie, he doesn't really use that much.
Because like he doesn't have your stereotypical powers, right? His powers are he went to the hospital because he was a burn victim and they severed his nerve endings, yet when he gets punched in the face he still reacts like he's getting punched in the face. When he's hanging onto the helicopter, dude's like kicking him and he's reacting like, ow, that hurts. It's just like your whole body is covered in like 8th degree burns. I don't think this little slap is gonna do anything. But the just put all that aside, and like the scene where he becomes Robert Durant, Larry Drake's character, and they have that like Looney Tunes moment in the revolving door is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was cool. That was a cool sequence. His face is so burned. Is that like done? Like that's done, and you're okay to get like go out like that? It's not going to be infected or something. It looks horrible.
Yeah. We got to talk about the main scene. I know we kind of alluded to it earlier, but yeah, that helicopter scene, because there are some shots where they're going for it, and they actually, obviously there was some stuntman dangling from this thing, and they're flying through probably a very small space, not like a whole cityscape like you're meant to believe. But then it just goes like these close-ups on Liam Neeson in the makeup, and it's just it just looks crazy.
But the ending is so fast. Like it just ramps up so fast there. I get it though, because like this is an origin story too. In a lot of origin story movies, it's generally longer because you got to pack in a lot of backstory and then also get a story.
Right.
And unfortunately, the backstory is really cool for me and really fun. The main story is so quick, and it could have been developed a bit more.
Yeah.
He has, like we said, like this whole Phantom of the Opera kind of vibe going, where he's like
Quasimodo,
and he's like internally dealing with his whatever problem, his darkness, and then with his love rejecting him. Right. And that's why that whole scene where he's like, we should get married, and she literally says, I don't know, I like living by myself or something. Kind of is like out of place for me. I would feel like you would want to ham up like their love and like make it more tragic. But the fact that she's like, I guess we could get married, or whatever, and then he becomes Fan of the Opera and he's like still pining for her in the darkness, it kind of loses a lot of impact when it I don't know, when they don't really earn the love story to begin with.
Well, that was her improving, because she was literally just trying to get fired from this thing, apparently.
Oh, really? I could see that.
Yeah, she's like, I'm done. Can I have a really nice, place that I live. I'd like to go there. So can we stop filming this movie? Her turn, especially, right? Like, during the big, scene in the unfinished skyscraper, and he's just like, God, she fell like a couple stories and landed on the cuffs. I'm like, her fucking hands would be ripped off.
Yeah.
But whatever. Again, suspend disbelief for this film because it's worth it. But yeah, the whole love story, and then she has this like huge turn where she's just like, "Oh, I'll love you no matter if you look like a burnt nutsack," and he's like, "Oh, I'm Darkman,"
The only other movie that I think out of the top of my head that's like really kind of like this movie, and I haven't seen it in so long, is The Guyver. Did you ever see that?
Oh my God.
With Mark Hamill?
Yeah.
Where it's like a really dark superhero movie with a lot of adult themes and violence and stuff like that. Now that is actually based on a comic book, I think, or a manga or something like that. But that's the like one movie where I'm like, oh yeah, it's sort of similar to Darkman in some ways. It's such a weird movie that is hard to recommend to like normal people. Like I couldn't, like my wife likes superhero shit maybe, but I couldn't say go watch Darkman.
No.
The people that I would recommend this movie to the most would be like horror people.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's where it shines. This is more in the Evil Dead oeuvre than his Spider-Man stuff. Yeah. Sure.
So I mean that's what's cool about this movie, though, right? Like you get a very iconic horror director for the most part. At least that's what he was originally known for, who has a very specific style, and you get his take on what a superhero movie is, and it's nothing like you've seen before, which is cool because a lot of superhero movies now, they are well done, they're well made, but do they have a very specific style that you can pick out from like a particular visionary? Not really.
Right.
Like if you had Sam Raimi direct a Spider-Man this year, would it probably just look like a Spider-Man movie? For the most part, you might get a little hints here and there, but there is so much influence from his horror background and stuff in this movie, and that's kind of why I like it so much, because you get that mashup, and we keep saying it, but like that's why it's so fun, so memorable to me.
Yeah, I think that I'll disagree with you a little bit with saying that he is one of those directors that still, even with a budget, lets his vision shine. And I think that studios be damned a little bit. Like if this was James Cameron, he would just be like, "Yep, I will check off all the boxes that the people that sign the checks, tell me to do." And Raimi's still like, that's probably why he's not on huge films anymore. Although I guess he's kind of
I don't know,
a little resurgence now.
I mean, I don't want to dunk on Sam Raimi because I like what was his last, like Drag Me to Hell. I like quite a bit, and that feels like a Sam Raimi movie. I'm just saying, I don't know what the last Spider-Man movie looked like, but I just feel like it's a departure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In some ways, so.
He's doing Doctor Strange. Now they fired the original director to get him. So, I mean, that's like... I'm 100% on board to see what he could do with that big of a budget, because I just can't... he's like... He was like Taika Waititi before Taika Waititi was cool, right? Like, he's like, I'm going to make a Sam Raimi film no matter what, and like it or not, it's just going to be there. And it usually, he's made some of the biggest classics, especially in the horror genre, that anyone's even tried to attempt. He's just a national treasure. And I just want to thank you so much for making me watch this film.
Yeah, well, I want to see Darkman 4, Darkman Returns in theaters. That's never gonna happen.
when there's no more theaters, Chris, you didn't get the.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Fold him into the MCU. Fuck it,
Liam Neeson would be on board for that, I think. Maybe.
Yeah. I would recommend this. Unfortunately, to a very narrow audience, and no matter how much I'm screaming from the rooftops about it. Because it's a very jarring film. Tonally, effects wise, you really have to be a certain kind of film to find enjoyment in this. And I'm glad that I'm like, you and I are in this percent, whatever that percent may be. But it is a ton of fun. And go out and watch Darkman.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. It's I wouldn't hold it against anyone who's like, this movie's fucking dumb.
Sure.
Because it is so weird. But for me, it works. It works really well. So I definitely recommend it.
Oh, God. Yeah, well, that is our special Cult of Films review of Darkman. Chris from Bad Movie Night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for joining me. I could tell that this was definitely a passion film for you. And glad that we could finally talk about this film. Where can everyone find you? It's probably pretty easy.
Just go on them YouTubes, search for Bad Movie Night. We talk about Darkman all the time. And other stuff. I don't know. We have a bunch of things going on there, so just find us on there on those social medias. Bad Movie Night.
Perfect.
And let me know when you want to do this again and talk about Darkman 2, The Return of Durant. And then, of course, the best titled movie of all time, Darkman 3, Die, Darkman, Die.
So good.
So good.
So good. Don't threaten me with a good time, because I'll have you on tomorrow. But you can find me, if you want to talk movies, you could do so on Twitter at OrzovDone. You could follow our my big movie show, I guess, Film Hooligans, with my co-host Jason Alt at film_hooligans. Until next time, I don't know, what's a cool Darkman outro?
I don't know.
I'm gonna turn it off because when it's off, it's dark.